Well, hi everybody, and welcome to the second episode of the Me Time Book Launch series. My name is Tracy Wilson, and it is my absolute pleasure to be here with you today. I'm a best-selling author, a podcast host, a coach, and a mentor. And in this episode, we're going to be exploring the topic of mindset and how actually adopting a growth mindset can help transform your life in just 5 minutes today. Now, joining me on today's amazing panel is the one and only Marg, who is the founder of both 5 Minutes for Me and the Me Time book, and her co-founder, Finnen. Now, both of these ladies have been amazing in being able to put together both the app and the book. And you guys want to hang around to hear a little bit about their story and why it was that they actually went down this path to create this for you today. We're also joined by our guest panelists. We've got both Scott and Tony here today. They are both experts when it comes to wellness and also health and also performance. So we want to make sure that we're getting the best out of both of these guys today to give you what you need to be able to adopt a growth mindset. And together we're going to be exploring this growth mindset and how you can overcome challenges, embrace opportunities, and achieve your goals, no matter what the situation is. So without further ado, I want to say a huge big welcome to everybody on our panel today. Welcome to the second episode in the series of Me Time Book Launch series. Welcome.
Thanks, Tracy.
Great. You're welcome. All right, guys, so let's get stuck into this. I've got a bunch of questions. And but before we get into all of that, I want to hand over to Marg for a moment to just give us a little bit of an insight into when she created the app and created the book. Marg, you thought about the different aspects of somebody's life and you put into that mix mindset. Why did you do that? Why has mindset become a huge feature in both the app and the book?
Thanks, Tracy. And firstly, thanks to everybody for being on board this morning. Look, 2020 just threw chaos into everybody's lives globally. And, you know, I have owned a professional speakers bureau for 20 years now, and pretty much overnight that was all gone. And then the only inquiries we had from clients were around looking for content and speakers to help their teams working from home, thrown into all of this chaos, and, you know, how to be more resilient with this and still have a good mindset to be able to work through all of this process as well. You know, we all worked out what was going on with our lives. And, you know, for me, I wanted to do something different. It was about, you know, I had the resources in my database of the speakers. And so how do we utilize that more effectively to be able to help people through this, you know, super stressful time? And so, you know, with all of that, I wanted to do something different. And what I felt was that we were all encountering the pressures and the stress just tenfold. And I didn't want to be able to create a wellness program and to help people through their mindset in having to put more pressure on people to take 30 minutes a day or 60 minutes a day to listen to something. I wanted to do it and do it quickly. So how do we help people without stressing them more? So is 30 or 60 minutes extra achievable for everybody? Probably not. But, you know, is 5 minutes? Well, yes, I believe it is. No matter who you are, you can find 5 minutes in your day. So that's where the concept of the audio was. For the app. You know, let's go out to some of our, you know, experts in the field here that we can connect with, who can give us some short audios from their expertise about how they help people. So let's have some content and some tips that people can, you know, listen to quickly, learn from, and be able to apply in their day-to-day. So that was the concept of the app. And then with the whole business developing here, the strategy also was, you know, that we have a book, because not everybody, some people are auditory and some people like to have that hard, physical, tangible product to be able to have. And so putting the actual 5 minute audios from the app into 5 minute reads into the book, you know, we think is again something that is good and achievable and positive and motivating for people to set them in that mindset for the day. So just, it might be sitting down, having your coffee and just getting the book, and whatever jumps out you on that day, whatever the universe is sending, to you to look at that chapter, and just spending those few minutes to help to reset yourself, to get yourself on with the day. So Lauren has been always understanding of my vision for this and been on board with it, and we're extremely proud and can I say honored, very, very honored and grateful to have such amazing talent to be as a part of both the app and the book. So that's how it all started, and where we go from here on is just going to be amazing.
Well, I mean, the book and the app are both a credit to both of you for putting your heads together and actually coming up with this, but also a credit to every single one of the contributors and speakers that have taken the time to create something that they think is a piece of material that really can make a difference in somebody's life. And so to both Tony and Scott, we want to thank you for your time and your expertise in sharing your knowledge to enable us to put this together, because it certainly can't happen without people like you. So I want to firstly start with, considering that this particular episode is all about mindset, I want to start with Scott, and I want to ask Scott, why do you think mindset is such an important factor? Why is taking care of your mindset so important to you, and why do you think it should be important for everybody else?
It's sort of the ultimate question. I think that mindset is the differentiator between people who perform at a regular level and people who perform at an extraordinary level. I tell my audiences that we have three factors that impact our performance. There's our circumstances, things like the economy, the competition, the pandemic, all things we can't control. The second factor then is our work. So that's our strategy and our sweat and all the things that keep us busy. It's very tangible, and everyone's always looking for ideas as to what to do to, do well in sports and business, their personal lives, whatever. And obviously strategy and working hard, these things are important. But you can find two people who are working equally hard and doing the same things in the same circumstances, getting different results. And the reason for that is because of the difference in mindset. Mindset is what each one of us brings to our effort in the same set of circumstances. And, that determines, are we going to be more upbeat? Are we going to be more cynical? Are we going to have an open mind? Are we going to be opinionated? The way we manage our thoughts, the way we manage our emotions, these things directly impact what we do. So I believe we can master the way we think first, well, then we can execute tasks at a higher level and then get much better results in the same set of circumstances.
I love the fact that you've brought this to the forefront right from the get-go, is that the difference between somebody who maybe is mediocre, doing all the same activities, has the same strategy, but the one thing that differentiates that mediocrity compared to somebody who is really performing at a peak level is what's going on in here, is the mindset in which we have. And you're breaking that down into those three different areas, the circumstances that we have. How do we deal with the things that are really outside of our control? Because some people, would take that and go, oh, there's nothing I can do about it. There's a set of circumstances that I have absolutely, nothing to do with me, but I'm going to take it all on board and make it all about me, and therefore unable to move forward. But what you're saying here is that when we can take our mindset and we can overlay that and use that to our advantage to say, well, those are outside circumstances, but I actually have control over what's my thoughts that then turn into, what I actually do and how I handle that. And then down to the strategy and the work that you actually do. And then I'm going to call it the temperature. So our temperature, our thoughts and our emotions, and how we kind of manage that piece. So I love the fact that you've gone right to the crux of that mindset being that differentiator. So thank you for doing that. Tony, I'm interested now in terms of, how do you define, so now that we've established that mindset is the thing that makes a real difference, can be that differentiator between doing the same activities one person does, same activities another person does, but this person B has just this really the growth mindset. I want to know from you, how do you define a growth mindset, and how can people actually cultivate that in their life? Or more importantly, how do you cultivate the growth mindset in your life?
Hi, Tracy, and hello to Lauren and Marg. Wonderful book, and fantastic to connect up with you, Scott, as well. Tracy, the definition of growth mindset is basically that you maintain a growth attitude. So generally, you are a learner who continues to stay open to opportunities in life. And the opposite is a fixed mindset, where you stay in that same type of thinking for your whole life. So given the last couple of years on this planet, it's not a good idea to be caught up in a fixed mindset. And it's also a little bit difficult as you move on in your years. As you become chronologically gifted, you must maintain that growth mindset as much as you can. So if you're after a definition for it, it basically really means growth, according to the people who first, proposed this theory.
I love that. I'm going to touch on this, that you just mentioned something, chronologically gifted. I love the way that you put that. As we get a little bit older, we become a little more wiser. We've got a little more life experience, and we become chronologically gifted. I absolutely love that. And adopting this this growth mindset, and just continuously being in the having that open mind to be able to continue to learn, continue to grow as a person, and kind of adapt and go where you need to go to become a very well-rounded individual. And I absolutely love that. I'm just going to add to the stream now. Hi, Joel. Great to have you here. Welcome to Me Time. Welcome to Me Time. So we're just in the midst of kind of talking about a growth mindset, and I'm interested now. I'm going to go back to Tony, because I want to ask you this question, Tony. When in your life have you found yourself really having to delve deep into, gosh, in this moment, I have to work on my mindset, because maybe something is, getting a little bit out of control. Maybe I don't have a handle on things, and I've got to really focus on my mindset to be able to turn things around. Have you got an example that you could share with us where you've really had to tap in and adopt that growth mindset?
Have you got all day?
yeah, many occasions, right?
Look, basically, if someone says that they've never faced adversity in their lives, they are lying through their teeth. And in fact, I've got mixed feelings at best about some aspects of mindset, because the positive thinking movement doesn't appeal to me, the one that says, don't worry, be happy. I actually think that life's a bit more complex than that. I think we need to be into full experience, as compared to just saying, I'm now going to be as happy as I can be. Basically, the world's a beautiful mess, and so is your own life. It is a beautiful mess. In the midst of the worst things that can happen, you see the most amazing sunset. So how you cope with it all can be complex. So basically, you have to become deeply aware of your own thinking. So you work at a meta level. So there's both you and the persona beside you, and you have conversations with them. So that's one way that I deal with that sort of stuff. However, you can't just push things away. You must welcome them in and become aware of them, and learn then how to deal with them as well as you possibly can.
I mean, I love that you've kept this very real, because, everybody has something. Like you say, there's nobody on this earth that would have a life that's just gone swimmingly, butterflies and roses all day, every day. It just doesn't happen that way. And so to have this beautiful mess, as you call it, and becoming very, very aware of what's of what our thoughts are, and how to use those thoughts and use our mindset to help shift us into a different state of mind. So with that being said, Scott, I want to know from you, like, have you got an instance where you've gone like, man, things are spiraling out of control here, and I've actually, maybe you've got a process that you use that has helped you to develop this growth mindset, and how do you, turn it on when you need to?
I think that I sort of agree with Tony that when things go bad, I say go with it. I say give yourself 24 hours to scream and cry and eat junk food. One of my jokes is some days we need Tony Robbins and other days we need Baskin Robbins, which, you have Baskin Robbins in Australia?
We do.
All right, you know what I'm talking about. And so I just think sometimes a bowl of ice cream can go a lot farther than unsolicited advice or cliches like cheer up and look on the bright side. And so, not that I'm advocating, hiding from your problems behind sugar or anything else, but I do think that we are meant to feel our feelings. And the quicker we move through them, the quicker we can find the benefits. And so, for me, I certainly have had adversity like other people. But the one that sort of comes to mind, or my mindset made a difference, is like every other professional speaker in 2020, all my speaking engagements disappeared. And I sat at my kitchen table contemplating everything that got me to this moment throughout my whole life. I kind of ended up plotting all the highs and lows of my life. And I had my high points, which are my time in the green zone, which was, getting into film school and getting engaged and starting a business. And then in between those were the low points, what I call the red zone. And those were the things that, like being diagnosed with cancer actually twice during my life, and having my fiance break up with me, business issues. Like everyone else, my life has been a series of peaks and valleys. Well, when I plotted them on a graph and I connected the dots and I saw the pattern of my life, I noticed two things that had never occurred to me before. The first one is that after every one of my drops into the red zone came a highest bounce into the green zone every time. And the second thing I noticed is that every bounce into the green zone was actually caused by what happened in the red zone, either because there were new opportunities or because that adversity forced me to do something differently. So even though that time in the red zone was unpleasant, it was extremely productive. And the reason why mindset matters is because the sooner we can remind ourselves of that, we can start to find those opportunities. We can start to shift our focus from our suffering to what can I do, what's possible here. And that's when the bounce starts. And so I think that we need to allow ourselves to feel our feelings and have our emotions. But I think we can put every one of our life's episodes in context, in the pattern. We can appreciate when we're in the green zone, and we can find the opportunities in the red zone.
I'm really, really pleased that you've sort of brought this concept up, the red zone and the green zone. And often you say, we can get stuck in that, oh my God, things are not going well, and we could, the spiral goes down. But you're talking about, gosh, every single time where something maybe a door has closed, something hasn't gone well, that's always created space for another opportunity to present itself. And it's that mindset, I believe, that I'm hearing from you that has actually enabled you to spot that opportunity and go, do you know what? Even with, me spending this time in this red zone, I see the opportunity in the green zone, and now I'm ready and I'm going to go for that. So I think the message here is for anybody that's listening today that, from a mindset standpoint, that you're listening, you're thinking, gosh, how do I get myself to a position where I'm thinking happy thoughts all the time? What both Tony and Scott are saying here is that it's actually not realistic. As human beings, we are wired to feel every emotion, and we want to take that on board and feel those, but knowing how we can move forward and how do we get to a point where we're able to identify and be very self-aware that, hey, this is going on, but now we know how we can move forward, and then being open to the opportunity to accept the new thing that's coming into our life. So I want to go to Joel now, and welcome to the session, Joel. I'm interested from your perspective, like in your life, from a mindset point of view, at what point did you realize that mindset was such an important factor to how well you could perform in life?
Yeah, I mean, great question. I think, man, if you go back to when I was 18 years old, I was lost and I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was, I'm 40 now, so that was a long time ago. But, I had a lot of friends that were going to these special schools, Harvard and Stanford and Cal Berkeley. And I always tell the story that Joel didn't know where he was going. He was going nowhere. And I had no idea what I wanted to do, what I wanted to be. And so that led me down to this growth mindset and reading books like Tony Robbins, which really just changed my life and changed the trajectory of where I ended up going in my life. But, if you want to give, just examples, I think just like some of the other guys just gave, the other gentlemen, I think, was there a day or time? I think that would probably be the most pivotal time. But now the most recent time, I would say, October 2021, I lost my job like many others from the pandemic and some of the mandates and things like that. And so you lose this sense of comfort, right? And you can either go one way, like many other people have already said, you can either go one way and you can sit in the comfort. But, one of the things that really helped me is just realizing that to be a martyr and to be a victim, it's actually cowardly. And it takes courage to actually stand up in your beliefs and continue to persevere. And the interesting thing about it is, you know, when you really boil it down and you really think about it, what has any of us learned from being successful? Like nothing. None of us have learned anything from being successful, because if you were successful, then guess what? Everything worked out. And there was probably no exponential growth. Exponential growth always comes from those times when you had to try and try again and persevere. That's where the growth, that's where the wisdom comes. And I always try to remind myself of that, because again, that's where the real growth comes. And that's as much as we and our brains are wired to seek the path of least resistance and not want to feel that discomfort, it's really actually the thing that makes us grow the most.
That's really interesting. Back in these last, I'm going to say early 20s, we've had such an upheaval of change in our society, with people readjusting to the new way of life, and now we're just getting back to some level of normality, one would say. But these times that we have in our lives that are challenging, that are a little bit tough, that ruffle our feathers, are those times that enable us the biggest amounts of growth. And every single one of you have said that today. And I think that's a real point that we need to make, is that to those that are listening, that maybe in a moment of, hey, things are not going well, it's just a moment in time. And when we realize that it's just a moment in time and this too shall pass, things do look a lot brighter when we can move through that, and you come out the other side with a level of strength that you never had before, that you would never have been able to achieve had you not been through some level of hardship. So I'm really interested now in terms of like practices. So what sort of daily practices do you have, and what are your thoughts on having some level of daily practice that helps you to, I'm going to say, sharpen our mindset sword? What are those daily practices, and what are your thoughts on them? So I'll start with Tony.
Okay, Tracy, that's one of the reasons I love this book, because it is full of all sorts of practical ideas. If you're still talking growth mindset and maintaining and improving what's happening in your life, you have to seriously think about what you put into your head each day. And I often recommend to people to think seriously about where they go to access new knowledge. So I love using, for example, apps that I can set up so that they can actually find good information for me. Something like Flipboard, which is my favorite. So I probably spend 15 minutes a day in that app, and I train it to go and find the people I think are amazing, so I can tap into their expertise on different things. And that then stimulates my own thinking. So that's one of the big ones I use each day. Keep in mind that every one of us needs to be a futurist who actually looks ahead in our lives. Contrary to the belief of most, you can predict a lot of the future by actually creating it. And it's not new age mumbo jumbo. It is actually quite serious stuff where you can say, this is how I want my day to be. So I'm often running mental rehearsals in my mind. I often talk with kids about this, running a mental rehearsal of seeing yourself doing something in a very accomplished way. So two things just there for now, Tracy. One is actually something like Flipboard or some social media that actually looks for the good news generally rather than the despondent news. And also to maintain that thinking where you're aware of what's happening with mental rehearsals.
I love that. And I'm going to come back to that in just a moment, but I want to hear from Scott, his thoughts, and what sort of things do you do, Scott, that help you to maintain a high level of, a positive mindset?
For me, I find that when I try too hard, it has the opposite effect. So, if like I do a lot of writing and sometimes it's not working out, I need to get away from the computer. And sometimes when I have problems, focusing too much on them just creates frustration. So for me, my greatest epiphanies, my greatest peace is when I'm out walking, whether it's down the street, whether it's out in nature. I hike a lot, and I don't work on the problem consciously. My understanding from brain science, and I'm not a neurologist, but my understanding is that the brain subconsciously continues to work on issues and brainstorming, that kind of thing. But when you're not consciously trying to put energy there, then the brain can divert more energy to what's happening, subconsciously. And so I go out for walks. I take the dog. I try to disengage consciously to let everything that's happening internally work out. And it's amazing how often and suddenly out of nowhere, the answer comes. And it really doesn't come out of nowhere. I think it's coming from deep inside the brain where I was able to put more energy. So for me, I just go for a walk or exercise, try to get away from the problem, and then kind of wait for it to come to me.
Great, thank you. I'm just going to come back to something that Tony actually said, and it's interesting because I actually had that mental rehearsal. I love that, and I actually did that with my granddaughter a week or so ago. She actually came home and she was, Nan, I'm going to go to school tomorrow, and I am going to try out for the school dance team. And we did a little mental rehearsal before she went to school the next day, and it was walking herself through mentally what she was going to do in this dance for the test that she had to do, and then also seeing herself being awarded as a team member. And she came home that night and she said, "Man, that thing you showed me how to do, it worked. I made the team." So that it's a really very practical but fun thing you can do no matter what. I think no matter what age you are. She's 10 years old and she really enjoyed doing that particular activity. The other that I loved about what you said, Scott, is sometimes is this point of disengaging, and often we don't allow ourselves to do that. You think, oh gosh, you're going to have a completely different perspective here of having to be in the moment and thinking about the issue and thinking about the problem and almost over analyzing it, and let's say making a mountain out of a molehill, which is often what can happen when we're kind of over analyzing things. What you're saying is take a deep breath, take a step away, disengage from that, and just allow our very clever and sophisticated subconscious mind deal with that problem, whilst you now can make room to focus, be present, and enjoy other things in your life. So I think that's a really great way of being able to just get back to center and get back to who the true you and some level of alignment. So I really like that. I want to ask you now, in terms of one of the practices that a lot of people talk about is this concept of gratitude, and the concept of being grateful or giving gratitude to things each and every day. Is that a practice that you have used, that you incorporate into your mindset practices? Maybe I'll even ask Lauren that question, actually. I'll come back to you, Scott. I'm really keen to know what you think too, but I'm going to jump to Lauren and ask her, what it is that you do, what do you do, and do you practice gratitude?
I'd love to say I do it every day, but honestly, I don't. It's something that definitely I do think about all the time. And yes, I want to add it into my daily routine. And I do try, definitely. I think it is important. I think it's important. I like to plan, but I'm always thinking of the goals and getting there, and I need to step back and be a little bit more present sometimes. And that, I think that's just where gratitude is, just being present, which is an effort in itself. But yes, I definitely would like to try to.
I am really appreciate your honesty with that, Lauren, because I think you are not alone in that. I think there's a lot of people that think, because I'm going to go to Scott and ask his opinion on sort of this practice of, people saying you should practice gratitude every single day and it will change your life. So I'm grateful that you have identified the fact that you would like to do it, but it's not part of a daily practice for you just yet, because there are a lot of other people that will be sitting in that same space. And what you've just said now says to everybody, it's okay. It's okay that you're not doing that just yet, but if it is a practice that you would like to adopt, you absolutely can. So let me jump to Scott, and I want your opinion on, this practice of gratitude. And if you've been doing it, what sort of difference, if any, has it made to your life?
I think it's important to distinguish between being grateful and practicing gratitude. Mm. When people say be grateful or you should be grateful, I have some resistance. First of all, I don't like any kind of I should coming from someone else. Just like, when people say calm down or be happy, it's like I can't just flip a switch and get into an emotional state that I want. I don't think that's how mindset works. But practicing gratitude is different. To me, practicing gratitude isn't about forcing yourself to feel something. It's encouraging yourself to look in a different direction. to say, I still have my problems. I still have goals I haven't achieved. I still have things I want, but I'm going to take a moment and look at what I have accomplished, what I do have, still acknowledging that the lack exists, problems exist. But for right now, I'm going to look in another direction. I'm going to look at what's good and what I have and just sort of take that in and appreciate it. It's a shift in focus, which is different than a shift in emotions. But more often than not, that shift in focus does help your emotions. Now, one of the rituals that we have in our family is when we have a Friday night dinner. And one of our rituals, we go around the table and everyone says what they're grateful for. And honestly, most of the time, I don't think it really shifts anybody's emotional state. You know, the kids are rolling their eyes. Let's do it. Can we just so we can eat? But I think the ritual, it just is a reminder. So hopefully some other time during the week, there'll be a moment where one member of the family, maybe everyone in the family, will shift that focus. And so for me, it's hard to really kind of create rituals to say at this moment, I'm going to do it. But when I can, when I remember, when I take stock of what I do have, I do find that emotionally it's uplifting and it helps me get through the moment that are tough.
I mean, that's kind of cool. I love, families getting together. My family does that on the regular too. And funny because the kids will, this is just something silly that Dad wants us to do in this moment. When can we eat? But funnily enough, over time, right, it's like something that becomes part of who they are and part of their culture, so to speak. And as we move into adulthood, we become a lot more aware of it. So I love the fact that you are doing that with the kids, even though they mightn't think it's so much fun right at this point in time.
The funny thing is, not only are they just doing it to appease me, I'm just doing it to role model for them. I can't even say that I'm necessarily really feeling it at the moment, but I still feel like overall it's probably a good idea.
Yeah, well, it sets the tone, and like you say, it's role modeling, right? Because they are going to mimic and follow our lead, so to speak. So I'm interested now in terms of often we talk about this limiting beliefs, which come back to the mindset that we have. I want to talk about when you're working with people, or even for yourself, if you're not somebody that works with others on this subject of mindset, but how do you identify where you have a limiting belief, a limiting mindset around something? So I'll go to Tony first.
Oh, well, we could possibly talk about Teflon and Velcro with this one, Tracy. It's what you put Teflon and Velcro on. So, for example, if you have Teflon on your good thoughts, it means they slide off all the time. If you have Velcro on your bad thoughts, they stick to you. I prefer it to be the other way around. A bit glib and simplistic, and yet it really stands the test of time. So if you're talking about being able to maintain a mindset, well, there you go. I love what Scott is saying, and what I'm partly hearing from him is the authenticity of what we do each day. And so I again come to that because, it's so stressful actually to be non-authentic, to not be your true self. Now, you can't be like absolutely abrasive and arrogant to people, so you have to contain that. But at the same time, you've got to look after yourself in your true self. And although it's a little bit glib and simplistic, I often think about the line that we're on psychologically with this. At one end, we're affirming and inspiring and just full of the joy of life. At the other end, we're feeling just miserable and horrendous. So we have to work out where we are on that line somewhere. And I'm fascinated by the way that some people, will see the world as something magical. So they'll actually see the benefit, believe it or not, in the past couple of years. Hard to believe, but there is benefit to it because we discovered how many people could actually support each other. We realized that we could exponentially accelerate in terms of our medical practice, whereas other people just see all the misery and the horrendous things that happen with it all the time. So when you come to this, it's just a matter of where you are on that line, because we usually fit in about a quarter of a quadrant in terms of our everyday life, and need to make the conscious effort to think ahead. So as I'm wrapping up on this point, it's becoming aware of your thinking. And I mean deeply aware of it. We call it your meta self. It's awareness of what's happening inside your head. And I sometimes wonder, what is my real life? Is it me, the physical self, or is it the mental one? That's an interesting philosophical question in itself.
Absolutely. So Scott, when you were thinking about, some common limiting beliefs that people have, what sort of common things are you seeing, and what would you say to people to help them to reframe that, say, self-limiting thought that they might be having, to enable them to embrace a growth mindset?
Well, what I never advise to people is to say, have a positive attitude. While there's some value in positivity, it's not part of something that I preach or put much stock in. I think a lot of people go into denial, or they make some pretty bad, irresponsible decisions just based off of optimism and faith. I sure don't preach negativity. What I preach is clarity. For example, I have a glass of water here. The optimist says the glass is half full. The pessimist says the glass is half empty. But a true high performer says, the glass has 4 ounces of water. It's objective. And I think that too often we draw conclusions about ourselves based off of subjectivity, based off of assumptions, based on guessing, rather than actually looking at the data, looking at what the facts say. And usually when I challenge people and they have some kind of self-limiting thought, I ask them, what's the proof to back that up? And very often they can't come up with anything. And so what I say is, in that instance, examine the facts and what do they suggest? And very often then people then become a bit more optimistic. And so I think the limiting thoughts are about assumption-based conclusions rather than looking at the data.
I love that. I mean, typically, we would go down the space of data when you're sort of analyzing a business, but very few people kind of look at that from a self-awareness perspective and saying, okay, well, if you've got this self-limiting belief, how are you backing it up? Where's the facts to back up your statement that you've just said? And you almost, in an instant have just disarmed somebody and saying, actually, maybe that's not true. That thought that I'm having about oneself or whatever the situation is, that's not a truth, because you're almost unwrapping all the layers to get to the root cause, to say, or a step, quantify that with some fact. And if you can't do that, then perhaps that's not a truth. And I love the fact that you.
I was going to say it's a good way to cope with criticism as well. It's like, what facts do they have to back it up? Because often criticism says more about the critic than it does the person being criticized.
Yeah, holding that mirror up, right? I mean, and if there's one piece of advice today that we want to take out, it's that. I think that is a real value bomb in being able to just disarm a situation, disarm a thought. And whether it's your own thought, I mean, you can use this on yourself, right? As saying, all right, now let me think about that a little bit more. Is there a fact that backs up what I'm thinking right now? And if there is not one, well, you should be able to just let it go. Let it go and move on. I want to ask this question now. So we've got both the 5 Minutes for Me app and we've got the Amazing Me Time book, both of which both Scott and Tony are contributors to. Each of you have contributed a really special piece inside of that book. And what I'm interested to know is, why did you choose that particular? Talk about the piece that you've contributed, say, to the app, because I know Lauren then went and looked and said, I want that piece. That's the part that's got to go inside of our very first edition of Me Time. Why did you choose your subject to go inside of the 5 Minutes for Me app? And what does your piece of material in the app actually do for somebody? So I'll start with you, Scott.
I chose to really get into mindset because, as I said before, I believe of the 3 things that impact us, it's where we have the most control compared to so many other things. And so for me, I really, if my legacy in this world is, I'd love to have people live and work and just exist at just a slightly better level and understanding that they have the power to make that happen. But it starts with reflection. Tony was talking about sort of meta thinking earlier, which is thinking about how you think. And I feel like if I can help people do that through what I write or through what I say, and they really think, and they think more objectively, they're going to find that they're actually pretty cool, pretty capable person. And so I hope that that's the impact that, I make in every encounter I have with those around me. And so for that reason, I was excited to participate both in the app and the book. And I certainly hope that's what people take away from it.
Lovely. Thank you so much. And your pieces inside of both the app and the book are brilliant. We absolutely love them. So, Tony, I want to come to you now and ask you the same question. So the piece of material that you've put inside of or contributed to both the app and the book, why did you choose that? Because literally you got 5 minutes to provide something to our people inside of the app. Why did you choose that subject matter as your 5 minutes of brilliance?
Oh, Tracy, partly tongue in cheek. I remember being at a party a few years ago where people started to talk about the superpowers they would most love to have. And in fact, I think to myself, what superpowers would we all like to have up ahead? So, for example, I'd love to be able to fly. I nearly killed myself when I was 6 years old after watching Mary Poppins, and I jumped off the roof with an umbrella. I need to let you know it didn't work. However, I think more about, the superpowers we need now. So one of them for me, for example, is to be able to predict, in part, the future by creating it ourselves. I have some concern about the sum total of messages being given to people in the world today. And everyone who is listening to this or reads about it needs to remember that you are the sum total of the experiences you have in every day of your life. So if you subject yourself to miserable messages all the time, then that to some degree is going to flavour the sort of thinking that you have. If you surround yourself with people who whinge and complain all the time, the same sort of thing. So we need to see the good messages. There is so much great stuff that is happening on the planet right now. Every year, near the end of the year, I put out the good news stories of the year, and there are millions of them. Yet we don't hear about them all the time. So in essence, I wrote about some of the superpowers we need up ahead so that we can cope with those negative messages and turn them into something that makes us feel fulfilled about being human beings. And as I'm wrapping up on this comment, especially with children, too many children today actually believe that the world is going to end by 2050. That is their line in the sand, and that is a serious concern. Because that means they're not going to make the effort to put in the energy we need from them to create a viable and sustainable world up ahead. So we need to change those messages around to some degree. So while I'm a bit glib and simplistic with that positive and negative, and I'm hearing what you're saying as well, Scott, there's complexity behind it, that we need generally to have a realistic, optimistic mindset. Realistic optimism where we actually see the best in things in every opportunity. And I come down to everyone in our own lives as well. When you look for something, you find it. When you look for something, you find it.
What a great piece of advice. I mean, I love that. I mean, you're obviously a visionary that's seeing well into the future and what does this world going to look like, not just for you and I who are, aging, but, our young ones, and they're growing up, and we want to make sure that we're creating a world that is going to be enjoyable to them, that they're going to want to continue to build success in. So I love the fact that you're really talking about not just, those of us that are on the screen right now, but you're also talking about, the future generations. And I love that.
Can I just mention, I'm sorry. Firstly, I'm still recovering from you being a grandmother. You look much too young to be. Secondly, we need to think further ahead in life. We need to think in terms of 7 generations. Most Indigenous cultures on the planet talk about 7 generations. So whatever we do, we need to think 7 generations ahead. That's at least 120 years. 140 years. Whereas today, everyone is so caught up in the maelstrom and the rush of the everyday life, they can't even think of tomorrow. But we must have in our minds our thoughts about the generations ahead of us, our great grandchildren.
I love it. You're speaking my language. Thank you, Tony. I am all about that sort of stuff too, and we might talk about that a little bit later. So I'm really fascinated now, before we sort of wrap up today's series, if you were to give one piece of advice to our listeners today that is around mindset and how to really embrace this, embrace a growth mindset, what would it be? One piece of advice. Thanks, Scott.
To remember that you are having more impact on your life than anything else. There are circumstances that are out of your control and things do happen. Your reaction to it matters. May not solve all your problems or achieve your goals, but you're going to move the needle more in the right direction when you become more self-aware and make the choices that are most empowering and most productive. So be mindful about your mind.
Your reaction matters. I love that. And I want to reiterate it. Your reaction matters. Things go on in our life on the daily, but the way in which we react or respond to something actually makes a very big difference to where we're going and what the future for not only ourselves, but for future generations, what that actually looks like. Thanks, Tony. I'm keen to hear your one piece of advice around mindset.
I'd reinforce on what Scott said. I mean, the aged advice is know thyself. So become more aware of self. Get involved in perhaps meditative practices where you can see over in the corner of the room someone looking at you, and you get into their eyes and you see yourself. And in fact, that person over there is you. It's some version of your meta self. Become aware of how you can become aware of your own thinking and responses. Otherwise, you never get to own what you really do. So become deeply aware of self.
Absolutely. Now, Marg, I'm going to come to you to wrap up today's show because I'm really keen. You've been involved with these amazing people for a number of years now, with both the Speakers Bureau and also with their participation in the app and the book. And I'm really keen to hear what your thoughts are on mindset and how we can continue to create, for ourselves, this growth mindset, but also being able to instill that in the next generation and the generation thereafter.
Thanks, Tracy. I am a big believer, and this actually goes back to the beginning of what Tony was talking about, that we've come through this beautiful mess, and for Scott talking about, the red and the green zones. And I have always been a big believer that out of everything bad comes something good. And I try and frame my mindset around that, whatever it is in life, whether it's something personally or in business, this too shall pass, so as bad as what it can be then, it can only get better from there. And I think there's a reason with this, what started with the app, there's a reason we call it a wellness and a mindset app. I am absolutely a believer that our mindset drives so much of what we do. And, what we're talking about here is in being present with ourselves and being real with ourselves, and understanding for the future in going forward how that can positively take us and help us to grow and help us to better ourselves and those around us. And so I think, also the book called Me Time, it is just about us taking that bit of me time, like Tony talking about listening to an app that helps him through that. It is just a few minutes a day just to stop and reset, and how the impact of that, we talk about, why do we have these great ideas when we're in the shower? Because we're relaxed and we're allowing whatever to flow through us. We are constantly under this super pressure every day, and so time poor. When we do just allow ourselves that few minutes of me time just to refresh and reset, and to be able to go on. And, my hope and my dream with this is that people will use the app and use the book and be able to have so much more growth for themselves and be much more at peace with themselves, that they're helping themselves individually. And as I said, it's such an honor and a privilege to work with these amazing speakers and presenters that we have on there, and communally we can all do our bit to help people to live a better life moving forward, and to take a bit of the pressure off their own mindset, and be able to learn these amazing strategies and tips to live a better life and a more enjoyable life, I think, as well as productive.
Absolutely. Well, look, I absolutely love the concept that you've come up with, Marg, in terms of, just 5 minutes. Everybody can just find just 5 minutes a day to really, spend some special time with ourselves, and making sure that we're able to carve that out, listen to the amazing speakers, because just in that 5 minutes a day, if you're listening to somebody who is feeling, like Tony said, we want to be very mindful of what we're putting into our minds. What information are we allowing to get through the front door, and what are we allowing to reside inside of our mind? And when you do that, and you're creating it with the right type of information, the amount of growth that you can have just, is expedited. You can have a year's worth of growth in just 30 days, by taking on board the things that you learn, the things that you hear from these amazing speakers, but not just listening to it, actually going away and implementing it. That is the key. Put into practice what you actually hear and what you learn. Incorporate both the app and the book into your daily practice, and before long you will have a really nice rhythm and a routine of being able to manage and maintain a very healthy mind and garden that you can continue to cultivate over a period of time. So I want to say a huge big thank you to everybody for their participation in the book and also in the app, and also taking the time to spend with us today and just really exploring your thoughts on mindset, mindfulness, what your thoughts are about the book. And one would hope that if you're listening today, you have taken away something from Tony, Scott, and being able to implement those into your day. And if you want to hear more, there's a couple of things you can do. One is you can wait for the launch of the Me Time book. One of the ladies will hold it up for you right now and let you know this is it. It's other speakers have said, oh my God, it's amazing. It feels good. I want to almost hug it when it's in my hands. So you'll get an opportunity to get your hands on that beautiful book come the 18th of April. It will be available on Amazon. We will have a very special offer that you'll be able to get your hands on that book in the first week. If you wait a week, then the price is going to go up. So you want to make sure that you get in there in the very first week of launch. And secondly, if you want to hear more from both Tony and Scott, you want to download the app. Go to the App Store, download the app. You can get a free trial of the app. And then I'm sure that you're going to find, oh my gosh, I just need to have this as part of my life every single day. Once you've got it, you will not want to let it go. I promise you that. So go to the App Store, download the 5 Minutes for Me app, and make sure that you're incorporating that as a part of your daily life. So other than that, I want to say a huge big thank you to Tony and Scott for being here today. And I'm going to call it a wrap on our session about mindset. You've learned how to adopt a mindset, a growth mindset can actually transform your life in just 5 minutes a day. And I've already told you where you can go if you want to learn more about this. Absolutely go and get yourself a copy of the book and download the app. Until next time, let's tell you that you want to make sure that you prioritize well-being, your mindset in your daily routine, because you are absolutely worth it. Thanks very much, and we'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye for now.
Thanks, Tracy.